Hi, this is Allison Sheridan of the NoCillaCast podcast, hosted at podfeet.com, a technology geek podcast with an ever so slight Apple bias. Today is Sunday, November 2nd, 2025, and this is show number 1069. Well, just last week, on October 29th, in my review of the site-specific browser creating app Unite, I reported that it was inaccessible to screen readers. I told the audience that I'd written to the developer. Turns out, Benjamin has already released an update, version 6.5, that vastly improves accessibility. All of the buttons that I said were labeled simply button are now labeled. And better yet, you can even navigate around with these elements. It's not perfect yet, but it's pretty usable with voiceover. I can't believe he did this much work in literally 5 days since I pointed out the missing features. If you're a voiceover user and were interested in the app, I highly encourage you to give it a try. And when you find issues with voiceover support, let Benjamin know. Remember, it's available from SetApp or from bzgapps.com. 2 weeks ago, I wrote an extensive article on the trials and tribulations of taking screenshots with macOS Tahoe and its fancy rounded windows. The two problems to be solved were that some screenshot methods didn't capture transparent corners for the rounded windows, and the windows in macOS don't have borders on them. So they blend into white backgrounds when you take screenshots, like on my blog posts. I had two solutions to the problems. One was to use my beloved Shottr to add a tiny gray backdrop that matches the radius of the screenshot. It's pretty simple and reliable, but I do have to mess with the radius from time to time, depending on the shape of the captured window. I also created a tiny bit nerdier process to achieve my goal. I created a pretty simple RetroBatch automation to add a nice rounded border to my screenshots. I then embedded the RetroBatch action into Keyboard Maestro so I could add a keystroke to invoke it and then save the screenshot to the clipboard. I was quite proud of having such a sweet solution. But I mused at the end of the article on whether I could automate this even further. macOS comes with a command line version of a screenshot tool called Screen Capture. There's also a super powerful open source library called ImageMagick designed to help you manipulate images. I wondered whether I could write one script that used both of these tools to take me end-to-end in capturing screenshots and adding rounded borders without using RetroBatch. The answer is yes. Yes, I can. Did I need this solution? No, I did not. Did I do it anyway? Well, you know the answer to that. Before I get into it, if you're not into super nerdy stuff I do, you might still be interested because at the end, I have a much less nerdy solution. Using the screen capture tool from the command line is actually super simple. The command is screen capture, and then you follow that with a hyphen and single letters that are called flags, and those give the command instructions. I use 3 flags to make it do what I want. I use -C to send the screen capture to the clipboard, then -I to make the screen capture interactive, allowing me to switch between window and area capture with the spacebar as I'm taking the screenshot, just like the normal way to do it when screenshotting windows with any other tool. Finally, I want to make sure there's no shadow, so I use the -O to disable the shadow. When you put it all together, the command is simply screen capture -CIO. That's it. You can try it right now by opening Terminal and typing that in. Your cursor will turn into a crosshair, drag across an area, or hit spacebar to capture the whole window instead, and you'll have a screenshot on your clipboard. I think it's super fun to know this exists, and I'm pretty darn sure it's what's under the hood in tools like Shottr, CleanShotX, and the built-in screenshot app from Apple. Now, the much harder part was to figure out how to use ImageMagick to round the corners and add the border. As I mentioned last time, ImageMagick is an open source library that is super powerful, but with that power comes a lot of complexity. In using it over the years, I've pretty much never written any of it on my own. I've always heavily borrowed from the work of others on the internet. Like I've used it before, I looked around for forums where people were working with that ImageMagick, but I couldn't find anything recent and certainly nothing relevant to the task at hand. It was time to turn to AI. I tried a new AI assistant that I hadn't tried before and for which I wasn't paying to get the better version, and it kind of had me running in circles. The main problem it had was that it kept trying to convince me that a particular paste command would work. It wouldn't work. It would apologize and suggest something else that didn't work. I'd correct it again, and it would go back to the first wrong idea it had. After twice around that loop, I abandoned that whole path, that AI assistant, and I switched back to ChatGPT. Now, the command the first AI assistant kept wanting me to use but wouldn't work was pb paste. This command grabs the content from the system clipboard and then pastes it. But I believe it can only do text, not images, and that's why it wasn't working. I went back to ChatGPT, and it suggested I install another library via Homebrew, and that library is called PNG Paste. And that did allow my little script to access the system clipboard containing the PNG screenshot. I'm not saying ChatGPT didn't send me down a bunch of wrong paths too, but at least they weren't circular paths. After ChatGPT and I went back and forth for quite some time, I achieved my goal. I have no intention of explaining this entire thing to you, but I will share the final script in the show notes, and I'm going to call out some highlights. The only reason I have a hope of understanding most of what the script is doing is that I asked ChatGPT to comment the daylights out of it. Let's walk through some of the highlights. The first section is to initiate the screenshot, as I explained earlier. It just says screen capture -CIO. The next section initiates some variables to store the captured PNG, store the output PNG, and it's going to create a mask in order to make my rounded border. If you're familiar with the way doing image masking works, you'll understand what that means. It still then needs a variable for the mask PNG, so it needs to create those three variables. Then it uses that PNG paste command to capture the screenshot from the clipboard. As I mentioned, the script is going to create a mask, and in order to do that, it needs to know the dimensions of the input PNG. ImageMagick, which is called with the simpler command just magic, M-A-G-I-C-K, it can query the image to find those values. So in the script, it assigns a W variable and an H variable for the width and height it finds. In my prompts to ChatGPT, I told it to make the desired radius for the corners 54 pixels, so it hard-coded that into the script with an R equals 54. Now, it's only because of the comments that I have any hope at all of understanding the next part. The script will create a mask the same size as the image. First, it will be all black, which means it'll be fully transparent. I've never understood that terminology, but that's what they say. Then it will draw a white rounded rectangle of the same width and height as the screenshot, -1, and with a radius of 54. That white rounded rectangle will be fully opaque, and that -1 keeps the stroke within the bounds of the original screenshot. Again, I don't completely understand what I just said, but something along those lines. In the next bit, it draws the 2-pixel medium gray border inside the rounded shape, where medium gray is defined with the hex color code 888888. The code to do this step looks very much like a cat walked across the keyboard, and we are not going to go through it. Now, in a surprise turn of events, ChatGPT suggested using AppleScript to write the image back to the system clipboard. I would have thought we would have used our fancy PNG paste command we learned earlier, but the comment suggests that you might end up with a TIFF if you do that. You remember from last time, the TIFF ended up with those opaque, or was it semi-transparent, corners, exactly like what we're trying to avoid. In any case, Ray Robertson will be glad his beloved AppleScript comes to the rescue. With the full script written and safely saved in my Git-controlled folder on my Mac, I pasted the contents into a new Keyboard Maestro macro, added a keyboard shortcut, and it works. I can use my keystroke, capture an area or a full window, and immediately hit paste into a document, and I see my lovely rounded rectangle screenshot with those thin gray borders. I have successfully replaced a perfectly functioning RetroBatch process with a shell script method instead. Maybe not a necessary step for me, but if you don't own RetroBatch, you could use my fancy script for free. While this works and it does what I asked it to do, the screenshots were not quite ideal. Remember that developer Steve Harris told us that while the corners of the new macOS and iOS 26 windows have a large radius, he said there were 50 pixels, not 52 like I'd been led to believe by ChatGPT, and windows without a toolbar are smaller at around 30 pixels. When I used my hard-coded 54-pixel radius in my script, all screenshots got the same radius. That means when I take screenshots of windows with the smaller radius, visible elements can get cropped in the corners with that larger radius. I thought maybe I could just add one more enhancement. I gave ChatGPT a copy of my completed shell script, and I asked it to change the hard-coded R equals 54 radius assignment to give the user a choice. Since I was at it, I decided to make the two choices 52 pixels and 32 pixels to match up with Steve's measurements, adding 2 pixels for the border. ChatGPT enlisted our old friend AppleScript again to pop up a window offering 52 or 32 with 52 selected as the default. Now I can use my Keyboard Maestro keystroke, take a screenshot, windowed or selection, click the appropriate radius for the window I just captured, and instantly I've got my nice rounded rectangle screenshot with a lovely medium gray 2-pixel border. Now, I promised you that if you're not into the super nerdy stuff, I would give you a less nerdy solution. I did want to give you an update on the Shottr method as well. In my previous article, I explained that my beloved Shottr app was creating opaque corners, leaving these ugly wedges in the corners. I told you I'd reported this to the developer, and he hadn't yet been able to replicate the problem, but we had high hopes that it was something I was doing on my end that was causing the problem. Last week, the lovely Max, developer of Shottr, got back to me about the problem with non-transparent corners. He got back to me with the discovery that I was half right, that Shottr was messing up the corners. I had said they were opaque, and when he tested, they looked transparent, but it turned out they were semi-transparent. Now, who knew there was an option in between? He fixed the problem, sent me a beta of Shottr to test, and now my Shottr screenshots are truly transparent. This means I can have a super quick workflow with Shottr that gives me everything I want. If I use Command-Shift-4, it invokes Shottr to take the screenshot and then opens the app. If I hit the letter K, Shottr switches to the backdrop function I told you about last week and drops in that little border for me. I can easily change the outer radius to match the radius of the given screenshot, and it looks fabulous. If you read my massive article on Unite to make site-specific browsers, or if you just scroll through there to look at the pretty screenshots, you'll see the work of Shottr doing this workflow. I think there are 27 screenshots in that post, and they were all super easy to make. Command-Shift-4, spacebar, K, Command-Shift-S to save. Working with responsive developers is such a joy, and one of the reasons I love doing this kind of work, so many thanks to Max of Shottr. As I was telling Bart about my joy at creating the shell script version of a screenshot tool, I also told him that now Shottr can do the same thing for me. I told him that while I do still love Shottr, I might love my little shell script tool just a teeny bit more. He explained perfectly why that is. He said, "It tastes better because you made it yourself."
Hello, this is Eddie Tonkoi with an article about a rather neat microphone, the Shure MV7 Plus, which you're listening to right now. You may remember an article about the Mackie EM98MS shotgun microphone back in December of 2024. Well, that was me, but under a different pseudonym. This is the first of what I hope to be many articles here as Eddie Tonkoi, but curiously enough, this is the second episode I have appeared in. I will leave that as a puzzle for the host to work out. Anyway, enough of that. I have a thing for nice pieces of kit, and the Shure MV7 Plus is my latest. Since I like Allison's preferred structure, let's start with the problem to be solved. Now, I have used an iRig condenser microphone in the past to record good audio, including my YouTube videos that I also did articles about, and then used software to clean up the inevitable background noise from a fairly cheap condenser microphone in a sub-optimal environment. I relatively recently upgraded to a Mackie EM98MS shotgun microphone, which is superb for what it is, that being a microphone you can get out of video shot and still sound great. However, I'm about to embark on a new project, which is going to entail recording hundreds of hours of audiobook audio for my wife, Joan Tonkoi's fiction over the coming years, and the Mackie is not optimized for that. It is good, but picks up background noise that leaks in through the bedroom windows and isn't very consistent. Actually, that's a bit unfair, as I'm sure it's me that is not consistent, but the result is the same, variable sound tone. So, I wanted to move to a microphone setup that would give a consistent, warm tone, eliminate background noise as much as possible, and ideally handle my distracting mouth noise that I still create. So, to get to my solution, ChatGPT and Llama, more on that another time, pointed me towards condenser microphones, consistently pointed me towards Shure, and once I'd loosened the purse strings a little, pointed me towards the Shure MV7 line. Oddly enough, the MV7 line is not a condenser line, but more on that later. There are a few variations of the MV7, which are probably worth going over, but I looked at the expected quality, the promised specs, and the trustworthy name, and decided that if I'm going to spend 100 hours recording, I'd spend the money on quality. I also sprang for a decent metal-rimmed nylon pop filter to go with it, and this all gets mounted on my tripod I already own, which is a decent heavy-duty Manfrotto job that lets the central column turn 90 degrees, effectively making it a boom arm. And I'm all set. So let's look at the Shure MV7 range, which is designed for podcasters, streamers, and the like. This is clear from the marketing, which includes a studio kit and a creator pack that essentially provide mounting options. The microphone itself comes in a few variants, starting with the original MV7. Its headline features were also clearly aimed at podcasters, streamers, and the like. It has a dynamic capsule, which means that the electronics that capture sound do so without picking up so much background noise. It has USB connectivity for simple connection to a computer. It has built-in digital signal processing, or DSP, to reduce the need for processing on a computer later on. It has real-time headphone monitoring, also known as you can plug headphones into it. And it even has an optional XR output, which allows a potential upgrade path to better equipment. It really is designed to be plug and play, with the goal of bringing high-end audio capture to people who don't have access to a sound engineer. The MV7 Plus is an update that beefs up the DSP with things like digital pop filter to reduce unwanted plosive noise and switches to USB-C. Yay for that. The MV7i appears to be aimed more at people who want to connect to a phone or tablet. It has an XLR connector, but this time it acts as input, so you can plug another microphone or guitar into it and then connect via USB-C to the phone, tablet, or computer. Clever and very handy if you want that option. I opted for the MV7 Plus because I think its input-output model fits me better, and it was a bit cheaper. Acoustically, they're identical apparently. So let's look at the MV7 Plus, the dynamic microphone. I thought I was getting a condenser microphone because they purportedly provide the clearest sound and best frequency response. But that's not what I bought. So what happened? Apart from me getting confused, that is. Simply put, the Shure MV7 and MV7 Plus have been designed to provide an extended frequency response, which means bright highs along with strong lows, and also provide smooth and polished sound due to their internal digital signal processing. Think of how photos these days are the product of capturing light in the lens and sensor, and then computational photography kicks in, and you get an amazing photo on the screen. Well, I imagine the Shure MV7 Plus is like that. But you capture sound in the capsule and preamp, and then computational voice recording kicks in, and you get an amazing audio file on your speaker. Sure, marketing this at a focused user group helps, because they have been able to fine-tune the output to provide what streamers and audiobook narrators want, which is clarity, presence, tamed mouth clicks, and low noise. It sounded so perfect for me in theory, and I can honestly say I was blown away by its output in practice. Part of what makes this dynamic microphone so wonderful is the processing that goes on inside the microphone. The digital signal processing. At first I was wary of this, taking the traditional view that I want to get as much of the raw, pure audio as possible onto my computer and then perform magic on it there. This is how I used to view photography too, when I demanded raw capture and processing in Lightroom or Photolab. These days, I've relaxed that stance due to a couple of changes. One is a change in me, where I've shifted my outlook from seeking the absolute ideal in technical quality to a focus on capturing the essence, the art in the subject. Now, don't get me wrong, I'll always have a pull towards technical perfection, but I've realized that without limitless resources and without having the freedom to separate out those roles, I think that having something interesting to say must come first. So I now embrace the processing in my OMD camera and in my iPhone camera, and I feel ready to embrace the processing in my microphone. So what does it actually do? From the website, voice isolation technology separates your voice from unwanted background sounds so you can make perfect recordings every time. The improved auto level mode adjusts your mic's gain based on distance, volume, and spatial detection for optimized audio levels. The real-time denoiser uses cutting-edge DSP technology to eliminate ambient noise in your room. A new digital popper stopper removes harsh plosive sounds so you can avoid acoustic distractions on your audio tracks and a physical pop filter on camera when you're filming. Take advantage of 3 types of reverb, plate, hall, studio, for enhanced depth and richness in music recordings. Well, as I look at it, the first voice isolation technology, aided by the fact it was designed by Shure for this Shure microphone, which is targeted squarely at voice artists, is able to analyze the incoming sound for things that are created by a human voice near the microphone and reject all the noise that is not that. And it seems to really work wonders. Not in a heavy-handed, clipping kind of way, but in a manner that gently cleans the sound and provides you with a wonderful signal-to-noise ratio. Could I have done this in post using RX11 on my computer? Possibly, but not so well. Not me. I'm not a sound engineer. But this is where that beauty of in-house design can reap benefits. Just like how Apple controls the hardware and software. Rather than relying on amazing software like RX11 that can repair the audio from any source, it is being repaired by software that is fine-tuned to this microphone and only this microphone. Is it perfect? I doubt it. Will some people notice the artifacts and turn off the feature in disgust? I expect so. Do I love it and welcome it into my life with a warm embrace? Oh yes, most certainly yes. We then have auto level mode, which I turned off at first, thinking I'd want to have personal control over the loudness being captured. In one chapter, the voices might be normal, and the next there might be some shouty bits. My current thinking is that I want to make sure all chapters are recorded at the same level so that dynamic range can be held over many hours of recording the audiobook, not just within a chapter. It's early days with that though. Next is a denoiser, which again seems to be able to work wonders in removing background noise that wasn't already dealt with by the voice isolation technology. There is some noise still, which shows me, quite reassuringly again, that it is not taking a heavy-handed approach. The digital popper stopper is also present. I probably could test how effective it is, but having left it on from the start and loving the quality of the audio, I have no incentive to disable this feature. Either it works, or seems invisible enough that I don't care. Lastly is the reverb, which I don't fancy at all. I record in a bedroom, and I'm already concerned about any reverb that might happen there. Next up, let's look at the Motive Mix software. Now, this amount of complexity in a microphone would be troublesome to handle on a small device, so instead, Shure have baked the settings into the Motive Mix software. I haven't played around with the mixing at all. I already have my flow for recording. Again, more on this another time, but I happily record audio using Audacity and Audio Hijack for backup. However, I did install Motive Mix and used it for 2 tasks: updating the firmware and adjusting the microphone's settings. Once I received the box, I took it out of the packaging and plugged the microphone into my Mac using the generously long USB-C cable. It was detected, and I was prompted through a firmware update, which was reasonably quick. I had previously looked into the best settings to use, so I put those into the settings window for the microphone, and I was then able to fully quit the Motive Mix app, and the mic was ready to use. To record, I simply need to plug in my mic using the USB-C cable, start Audacity, or whichever app I'm using, and choose the Shure MV7 Plus from the list of input options. Click record. That's it. All the DSP on the device is all baked in and running. No need for manual controls. No need for Motive Mix. If I'm happy with the output, it is now just a normal microphone in use, so that couldn't be any easier. Now, there is a feature which lets you tap the mic to mute or unmute it, which sounds kind of useful, except touching the mic also seems like a bad idea. The original MV7 had a touch strip that also let you adjust gain and headphone volume, but that's gone now. All adjustments need to be made in the Motive Mix, and then the microphone becomes plug and play. One of the fantastic results of having a high quality, highly suited microphone and recording in a quiet room is that I need to do a surprisingly small amount of adjustments in post. I own Isotope RX11 Standard, so I use it with a light chain of actions. Not nothing, but each of the modules I use, such as mouse declick and breath control, all use a very light touch, which means that the quality of the audio changes, well, that's imperceptible to me, which could never ever have been said of my previous microphones. When I've had a few more hours of experience, I'll say more about this. Suffice it to say, though, that it is abundantly clear from the recorded audio that this microphone is head and shoulders above my previous kit for the task at hand. Now, in terms of the physical setup, the microphone itself, the microphone tube, comes permanently mounted to a little stirrup that lets it rotate with just the right amount of friction so it stays still. That stirrup has a screw thread to let it be mounted on a tripod or boom arm, and they considerately include an adapter so it fits a standard camera tripod perfectly. It does matter where your mouth is, and the microphone internal DSP expects you to be pretty close, I think, with the mic pointing at or near your mouth. I have it about 15 centimeters from my mouth, with a pop filter in between. This close proximity means that the microphone does not have to apply too much gain to the signal, which is good because more gain can introduce more artifacts, including noise. Standard advice is to try to have the microphone mounted so it is not on the table, since any nudging of the table could transfer to the microphone and get picked up as noise. Other than that, the tricky part is getting close while still remaining comfortable and being able to see your script or other information if needed. I have so far settled with this. My perfectly wonderful, comfortable IKEA Pohang chair, which is reclined a little but works well. The microphone on a boom arm coming in from my left side. It's slightly to the left of my mouth and it points slightly to the right of my mouth. I'm assured this will reduce the mouth noise effect I suffer from in my recordings. My MacBook Air is on a music stand placed quite far in front of me. I put the text in large letters so I can easily read it from that distance and control the computer using a wireless trackpad and keyboard on my lap. This may change as I experiment with teleprompter apps. The boom also has a pop filter clamped to it, which places a large nylon mesh between my mouth and the microphone to further help reduce plosives and mouth noise. I bought a nice one, an Austrian Audio OCP8, hoping I'll never have to think about it again. It is this that blocks my view the most, though. There is more to say about the computer side of things, but this article is about the wonderful Shure MV7 Plus microphone, and so I will return to that another time. So in closing, I was getting good audio already, having bought the iRig eons ago and the Mackie more recently. However, sitting down to read Jern's audiobooks for release online is a long-term project, and I didn't want to discover I could have done better 100 hours in. Having taken the plunge, I have absolutely no regrets. I've spent so much time working on sound isolation, room layout, technique, post-production and more. But the change to this microphone beats all of those put together. Or so it feels right now in the honeymoon period. My very first recording, albeit with settings already fine-tuned, was stellar. The voice was clear, it was crisp but human, it was gentle, and it was me. Undeniably the real me. And then I put on my nice headphones, Sony WH-1000XM4, since you asked, and the sound stayed clear, it stayed human, and the background noise was simply not there. I was blown away and excited, even more than before, to be embarking on reading Jern's books. As you can probably tell, this microphone comes highly recommended. If you want to know more about my experience with the microphone, or just fancy a chat with the lovely NoCillaCastaways, then please pop over to podfeet.com/Slack, where you can find me, Eddie Tonkoi, and a friendly welcome. If you want to know more about Jern's books, then you can head over to jerntonkoi.com, that's JERNTONKOI.com, where you can find all her ebooks, paperbacks, and also Lanta, my first audiobook, although that was recorded during the last year with the Mackie.
Well, thank you so much for that, Eddie. It is confusing for me with the name switch, but I'm going to try to keep up. I really appreciate you doing this review, and I've always been a fan of the Shure microphones. We've interviewed them a couple of times at CES, and the Shure MV7 Plus does sound like a terrific microphone. Your voice sounds fantastic, and all the work that you're not going to have to do processing the audio afterwards, that's great. And I'm definitely looking forward to all of the content you have coming. If you get value out of the NoCillaCast, Chit Chat Across the Pond, or Programming by Stealth, or all three, whether it's through reading the blog post or listening to the content, or both, I'd really like it if you'd consider making a donation to the show to demonstrate the value you receive. It's a lot of work to put these shows together, and though it is definitely a labor of love, it does cost money to produce them, and it'd be nice to get some love in return. You can go to podfeet.com/Patreon or one of the many single-time payment methods to show that love. In our Slack community, the most lovely Allister Jenks, who you hear from time to time, especially when I'm away, Allister started talking about some interesting stuff about looking at photos on a high-quality screen and maybe wanting to see it not high quality, and it got pretty interesting. And whenever somebody says something interesting in the Slack, I always try to punish them by making them do a recording for the show. But Allister and I got chatting and thought it might be even more fun if we did it as a conversation, because I was pretty sure I'd have a lot of questions. So that's all by way of saying that Allister Jenks and Allison Sheridan on a recording at the same time. This hardly ever happens. Hi, Allister.
It's been a while. It's good to be here. Yeah, I forget how we got onto the topic of photos, but I sent you one of my Japan photos of a nice garden and suggested you have a look at it on your XDR monitor. And I've actually grabbed our conversation here where I was talking about it. And I basically said that when I show my photos at work on a big 32-inch AOS monitor, they look good. And I grabbed my iPad mini, which is an Apple screen, which is, of course, better. And they look so much better. But the XDR screens are a cut above. And in fact, they're so good that I've turned down the peak on my MacBook Pro to 600 nits, because it normally goes to 1600. Because when I edit it in 1600 nits, it looks fantastic on an XDR screen, and it looks like absolute garbage on any other screen. So I've had to figure out that, where you edit definitely affects what you see everywhere.
I was just playing around. One of my quests in life has been to get a good photo of a bird of paradise. And they're a particularly difficult flower to capture because they're kind of two-dimensional. So you can really only get a good picture of them flat onto the side, but they've got a little bit of depth, and there's always another flower that's getting confused because they all look in different directions. They're really hard to do. Took a spectacular shot of it the other day, and I posted it, and then I looked at it as it had been squashed through social media, and it didn't have any of the light, the vibrance, and the excitement of the photo I was looking at. And I'm wondering whether editing it on the XDR screen had caused the same problem.
It could do, because the bird of paradise has that really vibrant orange, but also the deep, deep purple. So there's a lot of contrast in that.
Right, the dynamic range.
Making that pop is a I'll also there's a chap that I watch on YouTube, and I've also paid for some courses from him by the name of Simon de Montremont. Looks like Simon, but it's Simon because he's French Canadian. And he says the last step before exporting your photo is to leave it alone for half an hour and then come back. And I found that's very, very true, because not only does your screen affect it, and that's what we're going to talk about in a moment, but also you just get so lost in the photo that you actually fail to see what you're creating.
Oh, interesting. One of the things I make heavy use of is the undo button. In Apple Photos where I edit, I just use the little button that says, okay, take away all my changes. And usually the picture looks way better than it did. But if I do, I can also do undo one step. And if I've been messing with vibrance or brilliance or anything like that, I'm often going, oh man, what was I, nuts? What was I doing? Because it's like, it looks like a cartoon, but it looked really good at the time I was doing it. And that seems to be along that same vein of being able to look at it with a different eye.
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, I've actually gone through editing sessions of 20, 30, even 40 photos and got them all looking really good, and then published them all. And then when you put them all side by side, you can see that 2 or 3 of them are just like too dark or too flat, and it's like I just went through that and I was looking at that individual photo, but for some reason you just
Stop
Just lose
being
that
able to see it.
perspective on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd never heard of that. That's an interesting way to go. So when you start talking about monitors, you're using the terminology of XDR, and I know Apple put XDR in the MacBook Pros. And is it XDR in the Studio display?
No, the Studio display, I don't know what they call it,
Okay.
but the Studio display is like the old iMacs or the new iMacs for that matter. It's a really good screen, but it's not XDR. And I think the main difference is the brightness.
Okay. And the MacBook Air is not XDR.
Correct.
Okay, that was one of the big distinguishing things, or people said was a big distinguishing thing. Part of what I did when you gave me that gorgeous photo from Japan of the garden is I put it on my MacBook Pro and I put it on my MacBook Air. And I know I should look at the two and go, wow, that MacBook Pro looks better. I can't really tell the difference. I mean, they look great. It looked great on both of them. I mean, it looked slightly different, maybe a little bit more muted, but I definitely wouldn't have gone, oh, that looks terrible on the MacBook Air.
I suspect it's that particular photo. Like if you got a really well, really intensely edited picture of one of the bird of paradise flowers and tried that on both, it would pop a lot more. I think you need the contrast to see it.
Okay. Yeah, this is a lot of the same kind of colors of green, but the sky has a lot of texture in it.
Yeah. But I think you need striking colors to really appreciate the difference.
Okay. So you turn down the max brightness from 1600 nits down to 600. Now, my understanding of the 1600 nits is that it really isn't the whole screen is 1600 nits. It's localized.
Yes, it's to do with the HDRness or XDR as Apple call it. It definitely makes a difference is all I can say, which is why I suddenly thought, oh, I wonder if that does make a difference, and I changed it, and the problem has largely solved itself in that I wasn't ending up with flat photos when I looked. I don't often edit my photos on the MacBook Pro screen. But like when I'm traveling, I do, or if I just decide to, not do it in my office, I do. And it makes a difference. I thought it was a case of the peak brightness, but I suspect what's happening is when you do get those brightest whites, they are brighter on the XDR if you turn the brightness up, which you should when you're editing, I think.
Oh, I thought you were saying the opposite, that you turn down the brightness so that you make sure you brighten them enough to look good on other screens.
Yeah, you should turn the brightness up on the lowest maximum setting as well. That sounds terrible. If you set it to 600, turn the brightness up. But if you set it to 1600 and you turn it up, it's way too high.
Okay. Yeah, I keep mine at 1600.
Other screens can't go to 1600.
I keep it at 1600 and I keep it at maximum brightness.
Yeah, but you're close to an airport, so you should be careful.
The planes are falling out of the sky. Okay, so I think I'm getting the hang of it. So if you set it to 600, set your brightness all the way up and edit there, you will naturally brighten the photos and increase the contrast more than you would if you were looking at it in XDR or 1600 nits.
Yes. So So all those other screens that you're going to look at it on, including the Studio display for that matter, but certainly, my AOS monitor at work, which is a good monitor, but it's not great.
Right.
And a 1600 edited photo on that monitor looks pretty naff if I've gone for the really punchy look.
Okay.
But if I go for a punchy look on 600, it looks decent on the cheap monitor.
Okay. I think I've told this story before, but I like repeating stories. When talking about the brightness of displays, I remember I discovered I was losing my close vision because of the display I was using it at work. Because I would use this display at work. It was an HP display and it was poop. And I'd come home and I'd work on my display at home and I'd be able to see really well. And I realized what was happening was the screen was so dark that it wasn't shrinking the pupils of my eyes enough. And so my depth of field was shallower when I was at work than when I was at home. So my solution was I turned my desk so that I was looking out the window so that my pupils would contract. I think I said it backwards. I said dilated, but they contracted so that I could see better. So the brightness of your display definitely varies from manufacturer to manufacturer. So I see what you're talking about here. Okay, so what's your long-term solution to this? You came up with a creative solution, and we're going to have to give a hat tip to Nightwise in the middle of this.
Yeah. So after we chatted, I thought, you know what? I miss having the 1600 when I'm not editing photos because, as I said, it makes a difference. It looks nicer if it's at 1600. But it's such a faff to change it. I tested it before. It's 4 clicks. I mean, that's what am I, an animal? And they're fiddly clicks too. You have to click on just the right spot in Control Center to get it to bring up the correct menu, and you have to do that twice as well. So I thought, surely there's a way to script this, and then I can just hit a button when I'm about to edit photos.
Oh,
and I actually succeeded better than that.
Well, I want to tell you one other thing. If you hold down the Option key and hit the brightness button on your keyboard, it'll open displays instantly.
Did not know that.
One keystroke.
But I suspect you'd still have to hit the fiddly little bits because it gives you the slider for the brightness. And above that, there is a row that says display, and there's a tiny little disclosure triangle on the end of that. And you have to hit that tiny triangle to unfold a menu.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So that's the fiddly bit that I detest.
Actually, I think I'm at 600 nits. What's wrong with me? I think I won't change it while I'm talking to you here. Now I got to see this photo. Okay, so you wanted to automate it.
Yeah, and I thought surely this can be scripted. And so I looked at Control Center and I thought, well, I could just go in and click it. And then I thought, no, I hate it because probably about not quite half the time I will miss that thing, and then it ends up dismissing the menu instead of bringing it up, and it's just, I hate it. So I thought, I wonder if there's some kind of command or script or something that I could do. So I did my usual Google search, didn't really come up with anything, and I thought, okay, time for ChatGPT. Now tell me if you've heard this story before. I said to ChatGPT, is there I described what I was trying to do, and you have to use the correct term, of course, and it's display profile.
Oh.
So I said, is there a way that I can write a script to change the display profile on a XDR screen in macOS? I don't think I restricted it to Tahoe.
Okay.
So that may be part of the problem. I said, sure, you can use the display preset command, and it gave me an example. And it even told me exactly where this command was. So I went to my terminal and I typed in display preset, and it said, what are you talking about? I said, okay. And I gave it the full path, and it said, nope. I went back to ChatGPT and I said, that doesn't exist. And it says, oh, yes, you're right. Have you heard this story before?
Every day.
It said, yeah, that's gone away for the last couple of releases. And it's like, okay, fine. So I then
if it ever even existed. I don't even believe that.
I suspect, it gives references. I didn't follow them. It said, well, you could use a third-party app like, for example, Better Display. Now, do you want to do the call out to Nightwise at this point?
Yes, it just happens to be Better Display is what he talked about when he was on the show recently. But you found this completely independently, right?
Yeah. I hadn't remembered what he had ended up using.
Okay.
So I said to ChatGPT, if a third-party app can do it, surely I can do it. What a great observation, said ChatGPT. Oh, goodness me, here we go. It turned out that, yes, you can do it, but it's not so much scriptable as you need to write some Swift code and call private APIs.
Oh.
Yeah, and I was thinking, well, I could do that. And it said, but you'd need a, certified developer thingy.
It's $100 for that.
And at one point I went back and said, well, I do have that. And it says, oh, okay. And it started writing code. And I thought, oh boy, this is getting complicated and it would possibly need maintaining. And I thought, no, I'll just have a look at this app that it talked about.
And
so I loaded up
It's a Better Display. It's open source, right?
Yep.
And it's on GitHub?
I got it from GitHub, but it's also in Homebrew, I discovered afterwards, unfortunately. Otherwise it would have been a wee bit simpler to install. And I opened it up and there are so many options in there. I was just getting lost. I mean, it's a very, very powerful and capable app. It's a pretty decent design, but there's just so much in there and there's so much jargon in there that I couldn't actually find what I needed. I couldn't set the display profile because there was all of this stuff that it was there's a hack where you can get your maximum brightness across your whole screen. So you can have your entire, Pro Display XDR light up in 1600 nits of white, which it can't normally do and is probably bad for it if you leave it on that way. So I just couldn't bring myself to spend the time to pore through this interface and figure out exactly what was needed.
So you asked ChatGPT?
No, I'd given up on ChatGPT by that stage. So I thought, well, and even if I could find it in the app, I couldn't figure out necessarily how I would automate it, because that's what I really wanted, is I wanted to be able to set something up and then forget about it. So then I thought, one thing I haven't checked is whether maybe there's something in shortcuts. I've just recently installed Tahoe. I know there's some new stuff in there. I wonder if there's anything in shortcuts. So I opened up Apple Shortcuts and I did a search, and I found an action that says set display profile. I thought, brilliant.
Oh my gosh.
And then I noticed the icon on it. It is provided by Better Display.
So if you'd done it in the other order, if you'd checked shortcuts first, you never would have found it because you wouldn't have gone back to that.
Yeah.
No
correct.
way. Oh, that's amazing.
To be fair to Better Display, it does describe that he has shortcut support. But I hadn't noticed that when I was looking at the details, because I was looking at, how to actually set the display profile and could it do it? Yes, it can. Yes, it exposes it via a shortcut. No, you don't need the Pro license to use the shortcut functions.
Wow.
So, bingo. And then I thought, hang on, Tahoe added these things called automations. I wonder if. And so I said, create a new automation. And it said, well, what's the event you want to go on? And one of the events is open or close an application.
Oh.
So I now have two shortcuts, one that uses the action from Better Display to set the profile to 600 nits and one that sets it to 1600 nits. I was very unimaginative with the names of those. You can probably imagine them. And then I have two automations. When I open DxO Photolab 9, run the 600 nit shortcut. And when I close DxO Photolab 9, run the 1600 nit shortcut.
Oh my gosh.
Job done.
Really?
Now, when I launch Photolab, there's a slight sort of blanking of the display as it switches, and I'm away. And when I close it, it does the same thing again, and I'm back at 1600.
That's
easy.
That's amazing. That's so cool.
The irony is how easy it was in the end. Install this app and create a couple of shortcuts.
Right. Because the shortcut now
is
exists, right? I'm going to bring up shortcuts. By the way, to give you an idea of how easy it is to do things from Homebrew, I typed Better Display Homebrew into Google search, and it took me to the Homebrew formula to install it. I copied the command, pasted it into Warp, the terminal I'm using right now, and it installed it, and I have it running. So that was that quick. But now you're saying if I do a gallery search, maybe? No. If I wanted to create a new shortcut, that's where.
Yeah, if you create a new shortcut and then you search for, I think it was display
profile. Profile. This is always better. Color profile, maybe.
Let me check my shortcut. Here you go. Here's the names. One is called Set HDR and one is called Set XDR.
Nice. I would have said 600 and 1600. I would.
Set the Apple Display preset is the
Apple Display
shortcut. Well, that's what it's showing up as.
Yep, there it is.
And you can tell it which display. So I've set it to built-in display because my studio display doesn't have this problem, of course. And a little postscript there too. I thought, what happens if that screen is not on? Like right now, as we're recording, I'm looking at you on my studio display, and my MacBook Pro is in clamshell in a vertical stand. So that display is not on. And the great news is that it just silently doesn't do anything.
Really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It can maybe just because it can't address it because it's not running.
Yeah.
Per se.
It does mean if it's in clamshell and I launch Photolab, then if I then open it with Photolab still open, I'll be in 1600 because it didn't get the opportunity to change it to 600.
Okay.
So, that's a pretty edge case, I think. I do that from time to time, but it's pretty rare.
Right. This is really cool. I'm hoping you'll give me a screenshot of your fancy, incredibly complicated, difficult to have built shortcut
It's
when we're done. No, you don't have to do
It's
it right
not
now. We can do it
no,
afterwards.
no, but I was just thinking it. If I make the screen wide enough, oh no, it's still on 2 lines. I can't get it on one.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Well, that's a rare case for a macOS shortcut to do something correctly. I mean,
I have, how many shortcuts have I got here? 5 by 7, 35, 39 shortcuts. And that's 2 that I would be using regularly.
well, and I mean, there may be shortcuts in there that have come over from your iOS shortcuts that actually do something useful.
No.
No?
There's all sorts of things I've set up and thinking that they were cool at the time. Oh, I tell a lie. There's 2 more that set the brightness on my displays to 10% when my nighttime focus mode switches in.
Oh, that's right. I remember hearing about that before. Well, this is cool. I like the process you went through. I like the solutions you tried. I'm kind of happy to hear you were intimidated by Better Display because I did install it after talking to Nightwise, and I looked at it and I went, "Oh wow, that's like a whole bunch of stuff. I'm going to close you now." Sometimes I just get scared off.
It's kind of like the quote unquote typical open source in that it's got absolutely everything in it, but at least it looks nice.
Yeah, it is pretty. It doesn't have that pre World War II look to it.
Yes, a certain app always
Industrial
comes to mind when you sort of start saying that.
Well, this is fantastic. If people wanted to see all of your photos, where would they go?
Goodness me. Probably my landing site, which is zkarj.me, and that has links to most of the things that I do, including my Flickr, which is every photo, the vast majority of photos that I ever publish end up on Flickr. Some of them end up in other places as well, but they're all linked from there.
So Bart hasn't gotten you over to Glass yet?
Oh, yes, I'm on Glass. Actually, that's a good point. I don't think I have a link to that on that site. I'll go and edit that after this.
Okay, perfect. Because I know Bart is a big fan there of Glass. If I spent more time in photography, I definitely would do that. Mine would all just be failed pictures of birds of paradise and pictures of my dog.
They have series now, so you could have a series of failed pictures of birds of paradise.
All right, well, Allister, this was great fun. I enjoyed it, and I think I learned more because I got to poke you with questions. And I did determine I do have my Pro Display XDR set to 1600 nits. It's the XDR on my MacBook Pro that's not set to 1600. So this is an opportunity to make my battery last even less time on my laptop, right?
If you want to set it back to 1600 all the time, yeah. Go watch some nice super HDR video.
Right.
Oh, mind you, video is more efficient, so that wouldn't work.
Yeah, that wouldn't help at all. But man, my depth of field is really, really deep when I've got 1600 nits going. All right, thanks for joining us, Allister. The audience will probably get to hear you next when I go to Finland or Spain, or we'll see what's happening next year.
Oh, joy. I'm looking forward to it. I enjoy the recording. It's the stress of getting it out on time, that's all.
Oh, you always do a great job. All right, well, thanks. Say goodbye to everybody.
Bye, everybody.
All right, that was great fun, but I'm afraid we're going to have to wind things up for this week. Did you know you can email me at allison@podfeet.com anytime you like? I actually answer people, so it's really fun. If you have a question or suggestion, just send it on over. Remember, everything good starts with podfeet.com. You can follow me on Mastodon. Where? podfeet.com/Mastodon. If you want to listen to the podcast on YouTube, you can guess it, podfeet.com/YouTube. If you want to join the conversation and talk to people like Eddie and Allister, you can join our Slack community at podfeet.com/Slack. You can support the show at podfeet.com/Patreon or one of those one-time donations I mentioned, podfeet.com/donate with Apple Pay or any credit card, or through podfeet.com/PayPal. And if you want to join in the fun of the live show, head on over to podfeet.com/live on Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific time and join the friendly and enthusiastic NoCillaCastaways. Maybe you'll be like Ron Hybe, who noticed at the beginning of the show that I said it was October 2nd when it was supposed to be November 2nd. You didn't end up hearing that, but the live audience did because Ron saved us. Anyway, in any case, thanks for listening and stay subscribed.